He's a former U.S. representative, and now he's representing veterans in this country for the VA. He's the secretary of the VA. It is the Honorable Doug Collins. Doug, how are you? It's been a while.
It has been a while, Joe. I hope you've been well.
I've been very well. You may or may not know this. My dad was an Air Force guy. He passed away at the VA about 15 years ago in Miami. He really loved the service that he got, although I think it could have been better. Then President Trump came in, in 17 and started revamping the VA, getting rid of some old technology, firing people who we were told couldn't be fired, but he didn't have time to do the entire job. So first day on the job, when you get this nod, first of all, I wonder if you could explain to my audience and me, how does that mechanism work? Does Trump call you and say, hey, Doug, what do you think? Do you apply for it? How does that work?
Well, it had been sort of an ongoing discussion between the president and I. Of course, we got to know each other very well over the course of the last, about 10 years when he was in before, because I was part of leadership in the House when we were doing tax reform and then healthcare and all of this. And then I came up as ranking member of Judiciary. So I was fighting all the battles on impeachment. So all of the Mueller, all of that kind of stuff I was front line. And so he and I got to be, we knew each other well and kept up after he left. I mean, after the 2020. And so as this election cycle got closer and I was out with him a good bit, we just had struck up a conversation. He had said almost, only a year or so earlier that he wanted to see if I'd be back and come back to DC with him. And so that's the way that the conversation developed. And
nice.
As it got closer, after he got elected, this is where we landed. And he looked at me and said, take care of my veterans. And so, Joe, that's where I'm at.
Well, I love that. And he's always looked out for veterans. He gets a bad rap for some reason because people will lie and just make innuendo. And as you put out a video the other day talking about, is it Burger King or is it Washington? Is it journalism? A bunch of whoppers. And I want to get into a piece of video that you sat down with a reporter a little while ago. But before we do that, you get into the job and then you're inundated with all these lies from the left. They're cutting the VA. They're cutting veterans benefits. They don't want veterans to get good. They're closing down hospitals because they hate the veterans. Do you have to, like every single day, Doug, you and your staff, do you have to start beating back those rumors, or do you just do the job and let the results speak for themselves?
I think the answer is yes. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Look, I've taken a different approach. I mean, you've known me for a while, and I, become very accustomed to being out in front, taking on hard questions, taking on the issues, and try my best. But this is pretty easy, especially lately. I mean, we can disagree about tactics and how we do things, but there's two things that are just true up here. Number one, I'm not going to let anyone, reporters, members of Congress, union leaders, whoever, attack the VA with false information and false claims, innuendo and rumor. We're not going to do that without me answering it. I've just determined the VA has been a punching bag long enough. And GAO has said that we're on the high risk list. In other words, susceptible to fraud, waste, and abuse, patient care for over 10 years. 10 years.
Wow.
What's Congress done about it? Well, we tried to do Mission Act. We got that in, and then the Biden administration seemingly tried to roll that back. We tried to fire people who are, showing up drunk to an OR. Guess what? Union sued. They cut a deal with the previous administration, got that thrown out.
Wow.
Now we're working to get, some of that restored. But at the same point in time, whenever anyone like myself starts trying to make real reform and real issues, I posted something on Twitter the other day that said real change requires real change.
Yes.
And so this is what I look at. So we've just taken a different tack. We're going to continue to do the job, show the results, but we're also not. It's time has passed for you to be able to just kick the VA and then say get it better. But when we try to get it better, you say we can't do it. We're not going to handle that anymore.
And I love that about you. And you've always been very direct with me. You've never run from any question. In fact, you've always taken them on head on. And I love that. It's the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. It is Doug Collins. So when you sit down with somebody from the media, and you know that somebody from the media either lied, used innuendos, talked about rumors or sources close to the situation, or somebody who overheard the conversation from outside the door is the person that they're attributing it to, you don't have a problem calling them out. I want to play a piece of video and audio for my audience that's watching. Then I want to talk to you about this if you don't mind.
No, but I do have a second thing, Patricia, I really need to know. One of the things that I've been finding, we got into it a little bit in the discussion, but one of the issues that we're having is, and it's something here, I need your help on something. I need your help because all I seem to be doing lately is fighting back against innuendo and rumor stories. And this is what I seem to be fighting about all the time. In fact, Patricia, part of it is with you.
I'm sure.
And I just need your help because when you start...
She says, I'm sure. That's crazy.
Headlines with, there's a rumor going around and that we've heard that. That hurts my veterans. That scares my veterans. That scares my employees because it's not true.
Will you commit to not doing that in the future?
Well, there was a DOJ representative that day.
I have a VA employee who is our DOJ liaison. You knew that, and you could ask that question.
I did ask that
but
question.
when you got the answer. But my question here is, I need you to commit to not starting off. Rumors began circulating.
I mean,
well, if it's either true or false, Patricia, and then you go to Patty Murphy, saying that we've heard and we have DOJ may have barged into the VA today. Unconfirmed hearsay. You know what you'd have done if I was a member of Congress and probably done that? Unconfirmed report. But you didn't put unconfirmed report.
Right.
So, Patricia, I want to work together with you.
Okay.
But I need you to commit to me that you're not going to do this.
I'm working on it, and
I'm working on it. You know, Doug, that's not even a commitment. I mean, obviously you're holding her feet to the fire, righteously so, because those watching and listening are scared. And I want you to comment on this at length if you can, but let me start with this. I go live every night. After my show, I do a 3-hour show around the country, as you know, on video, on audio, millions of listeners, millions of viewers. Then I go on TikTok late at night with a T-shirt on, and I do a couple hours there. And every single night I've got veterans who are scared to death because they're convinced by somebody like this that you called out to her face. Thankfully you did so. They're scared because they're told their benefits are going away. They're going to get less of a benefit than they're getting. They're not going to have TRICARE or whatever the veterans, medical is today. They can't go and use the right to choose that President Trump gave them when they couldn't get an appointment. Let's just clear the air. Is any benefit going away to somebody who qualifies for benefits from the VA?
No. I mean, here's the part about this. The benefits and health care provided to the veterans who earned it are statutorily there. I mean, there's things that we change as far as, qualification requirement, but those are not going anywhere. Let's just put that to bed early. You're not, we're not randomly going in the middle of the night and finding the veteran who has 100% disability and then they wake up the next morning, they have 50% disability. That's not happening. And for that to be implied by members of Congress or union members or even VSOs or anybody else is just a blatant lie that scares everybody, and it needs to stop. In fact, it's going to stop. They can be liars all they want, but they can't take the truth and move it. But what we are doing is taking and looking at the situation we have in an agency that, by the way, you mentioned choice and being able to take that choice. For the last 4 years, we've seen evidences of where that choice was not being allowed, and we were trying to keep it internal at the VA. We were trying to. It was being one of those things where not the spirit of what Donald Trump and I, who helped vote for this in the House and the Senate, said that if you need or you meet the qualifications, you can go to community care. So, I mean, we're going back to the basics of following the law. I know that's a shocking concept for DC, but we're actually going to do it, and says we have to be able to let them go into community care, and we're going to actually budget for them to go into community care and also come into our hospitals. It's VA care no matter where it's at. And then two things, Joe, and I want your folks to hear this. And, if I ever need to come on and put a T-shirt on and get on TikTok with you, I will. If need be, because, this is personal to me, because here's two things. We cut probationary employees, and that's about 2,400 people. That's 0.5% of my total workforce. 0.5%. We looked at 2% of our contracts, 2% of our contracts. And in that 2%, we found $980 million that we can save now. And we're already beginning to move that back into veteran health care and veteran services. And another the total is 1.9 billion of stuff that already been spent will not be spent in the future. That's just in 2% of the contracts. And now I hear all these stories in the legacy media. Services are being kept, surgeries are being canceled. Yeah. It's almost as people almost are they're wanting us to believe that before Donald Trump was sworn in, the VA was perfect, that the VA was operating fine. The truth of the matter is that we're like any large organization. We had issues. GAO, a government accounting office, has said we have issues. So this idea that your surgery may have gotten canceled or may have gotten moved or an appointment got changed, those were happening and would never have gotten reported on January 5th. They wouldn't have got reported on December 15th because they were happening then as well. What we're doing is trying to put the money and the resources and the personnel to align with the mission of the VA, which is not about the buildings and not about the VA. It's about the veteran.
It is Secretary of Veterans Affairs. It is Doug Collins. Doug, I appreciate the time and the access. Important to remind people, I think, at this point, that it was under Obama where in Phoenix there were veterans dying because they were pretending that they were getting appointments. They would fudge the books, say they got appointments. These people never got appointments, and some of them died waiting. So President Trump came in and said, we're going to fire 6,000 or 7,000 people that shouldn't be working here, and we're going to give you the option to go and use choice. So let me ask you this. What exactly is gained by a Biden administration to come in and start pulling back back on giving people choice. If you can't get an appointment or there isn't a facility close to you, going to a doctor that you know and love in the community makes perfect sense, and I want to pay for that as a taxpayer. What did they gain by pulling that back? Just bigger bureaucracy?
Yeah, basically, Joe. It's a belief that government does it better. And that's it. I mean, you're hearing it from senators right now, especially some of the Democratic senators in the House, congressmen in the House. I mean, they have bought into the fact that I have a great workforce. And I want to emphasize this because I have VA people who are listening tonight. Your secretary believes in you. Look, we're going to have to make changes, and we're doing that, and we're going to do so in a very deliberative fashion. We're going to do it with input to make it better. I want to give my VA employees who are doing it right the best equipment, the best tools, and the best opportunity to do what they do best. But we can't just simply sit back and pretend that nothing's wrong. That nothing is, because 60% of the constituent calls in a senator or a representative's office are about VA,
yes.
Whether it's VA healthcare or VA benefits. 60%. Could you imagine any industry in the world in which you have to go to a third party to get what you've already earned?
No.
That's what we're dealing with here. So for us, it's just simply a matter of saying, let's look at the problem, let's fix the problem, and move forward. But when your idea and your go-to is government is the answer.
Yeah.
And for some who wanted universal health care, government-run health care, they view the VA, unfortunately, sometimes like that. And so they want to protect it. And then you have union leadership, you have, legacy media, you have members who just want to help veterans, but they don't know how,
right.
Sort of perpetuate that. So we're going to break down a lot of barriers to make sure that we're getting the veterans the care and benefit services that they need.
VA Secretary Doug Collins, we appreciate the time and the access. How much money? Do you have a number of millions that was spent on DEI at the VA?
I think what we found originally, and it's already been gone, is almost about 14 million. $14 million to not use meritocracy. Yeah, I mean we've already taken care of that and moving on.
Well, what happens when you free up that money, and you're going to continue to do that by getting rid of probationary people that might not have been necessary, getting rid of DEI, revamping things, making it more cost effective? People often ask me, where does that money go? Does Congress get it back and reapportion it? I mean, how exactly you saved the money, so where is it now?
Well, right now, what we're doing is taking it and put it where it needs to go. And we're looking at areas how we can work in our VHA, either facilities management or some others. How can we get the facilities we need, or actually put it back into community care to expand our doctor base and expand our access, outside the community. I mean, we're looking right now to put it back where it was supposed to be, in my opinion. That is working with our veterans and working with, lowering the claims. Because here's the last statistic I'll give you before we get going. And everybody just needs to understand this. Well over $130 billion added in the last 4 years. You just look at the numbers. Over 50,000 plus employees were added, and yet our statistical references all went down on performance.
It is Secretary Doug Collins. I appreciate the time and the access, Doug. I know that you've got short time. Just want to ask you, if you don't mind, why would Politico, why would they get 178,000 subscriptions from the VA that you and I are paying for? What is that? Is that just to buy a good narrative from the media? What is that?
I don't know why, but it doesn't happen anymore. And if our folks want to actually find out what Politico is saying about each other and all the other nice journalists up here in Washington, D.C., they can get the free edition and just sign up by putting their email in. We're not paying for it anymore.
I thankfully have access to you. Those watching, listening don't. Just last thing for you, and I really appreciate you coming. I'm going to hold you the T-shirt on TikTok one night. If you don't mind, those veterans, the families of veterans, those who they feel like they're in limbo. They're in a play. They're in purgatory. What should they do? What is their best first step to find out what they do, what they don't have, what was taken, what wasn't taken? Because they really believe their benefits have been lowered or lessened by Trump, which I know not to be true. What should they do?
That one, I think, is just, look, pay attention to social media. Go to Secretary of VA. That's my Twitter page. You're going to hear straight from me. We do stuff on social media all the time. We're going to do more of these interviews. Come straight to me. You don't have to worry about going through a third party. You're going to hear it from me, and we're one of the most accessible VA secretaries that's ever been. And we're going to be out talking about this on all platforms. So they just need to come to us. And, really don't go to third parties. Don't go to people who say, I've heard. No, I'm going to tell you straight up. And as I used to say when I was pastoring in a little church for years, and I used to say, folks, if you don't believe me, read the book. That was the Bible. If you don't believe me, just check my facts, because I've got no reason to lie to you. I'm running an agency that serves the greatest people in our country, in my opinion, who actually served our country, who's been a part of our country. And I have some of the greatest employees that can do that. Come to me. Don't worry about, don't get your information third and fourth hand.
VA Secretary Doug Collins, thank you for what you do for this country and for veterans, Doug. Come back anytime you want to get on here and talk about stuff. Let's make it happen, my friend. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Take care.
Thank you, Doug. All right, we're back after this. Stay right here.